Well, the hits keep on coming for Pitt's offense, but in a good way. Things are maybe looking positive, optimistic for Pitt's offense. Is the future looking bright for Pitt? So could we go that far on December 12th? I think we will. I don't know if we should, but we will on today's Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, Tuesday, Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Chris Peak, Pitt topics, Pitt stuff. I just thought I could just say a bunch of nouns and then we would move on. You know the deal, of course, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com is a place where we have all of our video content, our Pitt video content. These Morning Pitt videos, Monday through Friday, every day of the week. A little bit of Pitt sports talk to get your day started. Our weekly live show every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Me and Jim Hammett get together for an hour to talk to you about Pitt sports, and you join the conversation with your comments and questions, which is always fun. What else do we have? Some post-game shows. Still looking ahead at the schedule, see what we can figure out with those. Maybe once we get into the ACC, we will start working on a few of those. We'll see probably like weekend road games, I think, is when we'll do some post-game shows. But those will be fun, and it'll be right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So you want to make sure you don't miss any of those videos, any of those live streams, anything at all. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and you won't miss any of it. Of course, head over to the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. So you never miss any of our Pitt sports coverage. Football, basketball, recruiting, everything going on in the world of Pitt sports is right there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and message boards to talk to other Pitt fans. That's always the biggest attraction, I think, sometimes. Even more than the content and the articles that we put out. I think a big draw for people are the message boards, where you can hang out with other Pitt fans all day, every day, talking about Pitt sports. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And step by step, things are sort of falling into place for Pitt's offense heading into the 2024 season. And I know we're not even in the midpoint of December yet, and we're already talking about heading into 2024. But the reality is, after sitting through this season in these 12 games, when the offense cost them virtually every game they lost, and then, that following last year when the offense cost them at least 2 games, if not more, I don't think anyone will be faulted for looking ahead to what the offense might be in 2024. The big step, of course, was taken in that direction when they hired Cade Bell, the Western Carolina offensive coordinator, to come in and take over the Panthers offense. Heading into next season, Bell already, I think, active and trying to engage with recruits and potential transfers. And he's going to be interesting to watch, and we'll see how his offense comes together. We talked a lot about it yesterday, and we're going to try and get some more insight and information on Cade Bell's offense as we go through the week here. But personnel-wise, things keep seeming to fall into place. I mean, really, when you look at it, they haven't lost a whole lot from the offensive side of the ball to the transfer portal. I mean, almost, the majority of the transfers and Pitt players who've gone into the portal have been from the defensive side of the ball. Multiple linebackers, a defensive back, some defensive linemen. Even if a couple of these guys ended up coming back, you've really lost wide receiver Addison Copeland, offensive lineman Trey Anderson, and running back TJ Harbison. So out of about 12 guys who've gone into the portal, and again, including a couple who have come back out, only 3 are from offense. And I think people might have expected it to be a little bit more after the way the offense played last season and sort of the outlook going forward. But I think there's a few things at play. One, things like culture, and they really like being here, and they enjoy being in the city of Pittsburgh and all of that. And they like their coaches, and they like this, and they like that, teammates and whatnot. But I don't think you can overlook or undersell the impact of changing the offensive coordinator. And that's not necessarily just a dig at Frank Cignetti, but when they fired Cignetti, all these guys decided they were going to stay. But I think the indication of a change in offense, of doing something different, of identifying an issue, and that issue being an inability to score points or move the ball, and then acting on that issue, affecting change, firing someone, moving on to bring in someone new. I think the first step just of firing Cignetti the day after the Duke game was a positive, and I think helped your chances with holding on to these guys. And then the actual hire of Cade Bell, I think, has been well received because of the excitement he's talking about bringing to Pitt's offense. And, we know well enough, talk about bringing excitement to the offense falls a distant second to actually doing it. And we've heard talk before and not always seen the results follow. But I think in this case, Cade Bell is bringing a lot of energy and enthusiasm and excitement to the offense, in terms of the meeting room and interaction with the players and just sort of promises or optimism of what the offense might be under his direction. And I think that has helped as well. Of course, can't really talk about players, transferring or not transferring without at least a mention of NIL. And I think there's a factor in that, a factor of that in play as well. And when you look at the guys who have announced that they're coming back, guys with, eligibility remaining who have said, I'm excited to return to Pitt for one more season. I mean, I keep saying it, right? You don't announce your return unless you were seriously considering a departure. And so you have to consider that as well. You have to take that into consideration that there's probably an NIL factor also. But I think with all of these guys who have announced that they're returning, all these guys who have decided to come back, they had NIL options and opportunities elsewhere. And so guys like Gavin Bartholomew, or Ryan Baer, Branson Taylor, or, Kenny Johnson, probably Rodney Hammond. I mean, these guys probably could have gone elsewhere, could have gone into the transfer portal, found a new home at the Power 5 level, and probably gotten a pretty nice NIL deal out of it. And that's the reality of college football in 2023. It's a testament to Pitt on a lot of levels, in and out of the South side, inside and outside of the South side. It's a testament to Pitt on a lot of levels that those guys all chose to come back. And I think it makes their offense that much better for next season. I mean, you think about it, and the most recent return was Kenny Johnson, freshman wide receiver, who I think had a pretty impressive freshman year. Didn't necessarily get all the opportunity to show what he can do, but I think impressed in his limited opportunities. And I think Kenny Johnson was probably, I think if you push the clock back, say a month ago to mid-November and took a poll of Pitt fans, who are the players on this team that you expect to see go into the transfer portal after the season? I have to think the two biggest vote getters, if you asked every Pitt fan to list three guys, there would be two names at the top of most likely to enter the portal. And those two would be Kenny Johnson and Gavin Bartholomew. Two players with, I think, demonstrated talent, clear ability, and a lack of utilization. I mean, a player of Gavin Bartholomew's talent and ability should get the ball more than he did. And I don't think there's anything sort of behind it. I don't think there's any, maybe he's not as good as we think he is. No, I think he is as good as we think he is. I think he is as talented as we think he is. I think he can have a positive impact the way, as much of a positive impact as we believe he can, partially due to the fact that we've seen it. We saw it in 2021 when he was the second tight end behind Lucas Krull and he just made play after play after play. We saw it in 2022 when he got a chance and he had limited chances. Remember, he had 7 more targets than he had a year earlier, which when you remove Krull from the equation, it should have been an increase of far more than 7 targets, but he had 7 more targets than he had a year earlier and caught 7 fewer passes, which is unbelievable to me. And then this year, the usage actually dropped. I mean, it was even worse. And it was mind-numbing, and it was befuddling, and it defied all logic and reason, particularly for an offense that wanted to play the way Pitt wanted to play. And, Frank Cignetti with his history of calling plays for tight ends, and Phil Dracovic with his history of throwing the ball to tight ends, it didn't make any sense for Gavin Bartholomew not to be involved. And I might have said on more than one occasion that his numbers were coaching malpractice. And I do believe that they were to some extent. And I think Pat Narduzzi understood that. There was a game, it was one of the Monday press conferences. It might have been after the Notre Dame game the Florida State game or Wake Forest. I forget exactly which. And I asked about Gavin Bartholomew, his usage, his lack of usage, his low target numbers, and what he needed to do to get more opportunities. And Narduzzi said this or that, but one thing he said, he shared in it, he said that this was a Monday at noon. He said, I actually called Gavin this morning and just said, are you good? Are you okay? Not because he was concerned that, there was something wrong with Bartholomew and that's why he didn't get the targets, but because he was concerned that Bartholomew was going to become disillusioned with his role in the offense, which I think was probably a rightful assumption. Because if I was Gavin Bartholomew, I would get the heck out of town. I mean, really, I might have gone after the 2022 season. And he's talented enough. He would have ended up at another Power 5 school, probably a very good Power 5 school. And Pitt fans would have watched from afar as he had a really good season playing at a really high level. And I think Pat Narduzzi recognized that. And I think he recognized it was a coup for Bartholomew to come back for 2023 after the season he had in 22. And I think it was a coup again for him to come back now. But I think, because it was such a win for Pitt to get Bartholomew back last year, and then for him to see his usage numbers drop even more, I think Narduzzi recognized, this is a problem. I got to make sure this guy is happy, and I got to make sure he understands it. We love him very much, and we really want to get the ball to him, and we're going to try really hard to do it. That still never really became the case, and then Bartholomew got hurt against Syracuse and didn't play in the final 2 games. But he's a talented player, and he's someone they needed back. They need as many weapons as they can get, and he's a big one. And so his return, I think, spoke to a number of things. I think spoke to Narduzzi's assurances about the direction of the offense. I think, obviously Bartholomew and his relationship with Tim Salem and the rest of the Pitt team and the staff and the city and all of that, as well as NIL efforts made on Pitt's behalf. Sort of the, running the gamut there and covering all bases to end up with Gavin Bartholomew returning. Ideally, as a senior, he will see the production that his talent merits, which I think is considerable. I think he deserves it, because I think he is that good of a player. So he was one guy that I think a lot of Pitt fans thought was going to leave. And I think Kenny Johnson was the other one. Pretty impressive as a freshman, limited opportunities. Obviously, he had the kick return for a touchdown, but as he got more opportunities in the flow of the offense, and it still wasn't much, but he was able to do quite a bit with the opportunities that he got. And I think showed flashes where you were like, holy cow, this guy might be really good. They should probably get him the ball more, and they didn't. And I think the lack of usage, in addition to the fact that he's a promising young wide receiver, I think made him pretty attractive in the portal market and would have made him a top pursued receiver if he had gone into the portal market. We talked last week when we talked about Pitt's efforts in the portal. We talked about trying to get young transfers, guys who were freshmen or sophomores or redshirt freshmen or something like that, maybe redshirt sophomore, because they would have 2, 3, 4 years of eligibility left to play. And Kenny Johnson fits that mold, and they can't transfer. They've already, once they transfer once, they're sort of locked in until they graduate. And so it's like the new recruiting is going to get those younger transfers so you can have them for a few years. And you're going to build more roster stability out of getting those guys than you are out of getting high school guys, because high school guys have the ability to transfer at any point and go. And so I think that in addition to the natural talent, that element, the age element and the eligibility element and stability element would have made Kenny Johnson really attractive on the open market. And I think there were enticements made to get him onto the open market. Of course, those things are all through back channels and this and that. And I'm not going to sit here and say, I don't mean to accuse anyone. Everybody knows what it is in the transfer portal and the transfer market, that there's plenty of communication that happens between a lot of players and a lot of schools before they even enter the transfer portal. And it might not be directly between the school and the player, but messages can be sent. And I think Kenny Johnson was well aware of the fact that there were places he could have gone and probably done well in NIL to get there, and probably would have had a successful, a pretty good opportunity to play at a high level. but he's coming back to Pitt. And I think, again, sort of like Bartholomew, I think there's a number of factors that go into it. I think he really likes Pitt. He really wants to be at Pitt, likes his coaches and all those things. And then I think the promise of a new offense went a long way. And so you get those two guys back. Rodney Hammond's also coming back. Ryan Baer and Branson Taylor both announced that they're coming back, in addition to the guys you were already going to have back. Kanate Mumfield and Dejon Reynolds already transferred. Can't go anywhere, right? I mean, those are the kinds of guys we're talking about, those young transfers who are sort of locked in. The other guys who were freshmen last year, Lamar Seymour and Zion Fowler-El and Izzy Polk, as well as the running backs. Montrevious Lloyd, freshman last year, redshirted. He's got a bunch of years of eligibility left. Derek Davis came in as a transfer. You've got him. He's not going to go anywhere. Jules Goff coming in as a freshman. You've got, I think, and I know I mentioned Baer and Taylor there, but set those guys aside. I think with, Hammond in the backfield, and then just, Mumfield, Reynolds, and Johnson at receiver, and Bartholomew at tight end, I think you've got the makings of a really good, 11 personnel offensive skill group. I really do. A group that has made plays, that's shown that they can make plays, and a group that I think is pretty promising if you put them in the right system and the right scheme and call the right plays and design it up well and get them good matchups. You can get a lot out of that group. You can score a lot, I think, with that group. And that's before you even go out and add any more transfers or the recruits get here or anything like that. And we've seen a couple of Western Carolina skill guys go into the portal. Sincere Lee, the wide receiver, Desmond Reed, a running back, both really talented. Pitt's already on Lee, and they're taking a long, hard look at Reed. Those were that was Western Carolina's top receiver and top running back, respectively. And so you might add one or both of those guys to this group, in addition to anybody else they get out of the transfer portal. And they've been active in trying to get more receivers in here to upgrade that position. I guess what I'm saying is I like the package of skill players that this team figures to have in 2024. Between the guys they were able to bring back and what I think they'll be able to add either through recruiting or the transfer portal, I think they're going to have a good collection of skill players. Really good. And then you look at the offensive line, and look, they ran into problems with the offensive line this past season. There's no question about it. A lot of those problems were injury-related. Some of them were older guys just not living up to what was expected of them in their final seasons of eligibility. But you do bring back Baer, you bring back Taylor. Those guys are both returning. Terrence Moore coming back, should be a multi-year starter at center. And that kind of takes care of your tackles in your guard spot. You're going to have to figure out the depth, of course. That kind of takes care of your tackles and guard spot. Ryan Jacoby coming back, I think, will be a big piece for this offensive line. Probably step in at left guard would be my guess. And then B.J. Williams, who started games as a freshman this past season, could be your right guard. And so if you end up with, left to right, Branson Taylor, Ryan Jacoby, Terrence Moore, B.J. Williams, Ryan Baer, I feel like that's a pretty good starting five. I do. I think that's a pretty good starting five, a pretty solid starting five. And, you're going to have questions about depth. Jackson Brown is out there, could play tackle or guard. Jason Collier is going to come back. We'll see what he can fit in there. Terrence Enos is coming back. That's a good tackle reserve, a third tackle if you want to have him be your first tackle off the bench. And we've also seen them kicking the tires on a few transfer offensive linemen as well, because I think you always look to upgrade that position group, understandably so. But overall, if you could somehow, and this hasn't happened in a few years, but if you could somehow get those top five to stay healthy, in addition to those skill guys we just talked about, coming together pretty nicely on 10 out of 11 guys on offense. There's that other number, that other spot, though. Number 11 is a question mark, right? Is it going to be Nate Yarnell? Is it going to be Christian Veyer? Is it going to be an unknown or at least unadded, entry from the portal? That's a big question. I think they're going to get a quarterback out of the transfer portal, and I think that quarterback's going to compete with and push and maybe even win the job. I think he's going to compete with Yarnell and Veyer. I think Yarnell should enter spring camp as the number one, with Veyer and a transfer battling him for that job. And then we'll see who wins the job. My guess is it'll be a transfer. My guess is it'll be a quarterback who's not on the roster yet. But if they go into next season with Nate Yarnell playing behind that offensive line, if those five guys can stay healthy, throwing to Means, Reynolds, and Johnson and Bartholomew and handing it off to Hammond, just as sort of your baseline starting group, I think you're in pretty good shape. I really do. I think you're in pretty good shape. And if you have the right offense with the right play caller and right play designer and a guy who understands how to scheme up matchups and take advantage of mismatches and get the ball to the playmakers, brother, you might be able to score some points here. I don't know if it's going to be Western Carolina level point scoring, but if it's an upgrade over this past season at Pitt, I'll take it, right? If you can get 50 touchdowns in a regular season, you're in pretty good shape. And that's right around where Western Carolina was, so maybe you're not going to get 50, but if you can get 45 or 48 or somewhere around there, offensive touchdowns, you're going to have something to work with. And you're going to be a competitive team, far more competitive than they were this past season when they fell way short of that, way short of it. So that's an overview of the offense, kind of where we see things as we sit here on December 12th. And again, things are going to change a lot between now and spring camp. Things change a lot between now and the end of the calendar year. So it's going to be an ongoing conversation over the course of the next 9 months. But I look forward to it, and I think there are reasons to be optimistic about this offense, maybe even more so than what we had a year ago when I think we were sort of digging for optimism, despite the obvious issues with Frank Signetti, despite big concerns and question marks about Phil Dracovic, which we raised. I mean, we raised those questions throughout the offseason about what Phil Dracovic would actually do or how he would actually be. But I think there are reasons to be a little more optimistic this time around, and looking forward to seeing this offense when they finally go out and play sometime in September. This is not going to be the spring game. And this is not going to be the opener against Kent State. I think they have Cincinnati in week 2 again. That game's out there. So I think there are reasons to look ahead to that and look forward to that, and hope you end up, I think there's a real reason a real possibility of ending up with a pretty productive unit. So that's the offense. We got a lot more things to talk about this week, of course, basketball, transfer portal stuff. We will be covering it all here on the Morning Pit. So thanks for watching the video today. I hope you had a great Monday. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will catch up with you tomorrow on the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.